The year is 1969. This is the very same year that Joe Namath gave the guarantee that his team, the New York Jets, were going to defeat the Baltimore Colts in Super Bowl III, and they did. Guitarist Jimi Hendrix headlined the Woodstock Music Festival in upstate New York. The first ever episodes of The Brady Bunch and Sesame Street graced televisions everywhere. Hollywood legends Katharine Hepburn and Barbra Streisand had tied for the Oscar for Best Actress. Howard N. Lee was elected as mayor of Chapel Hill, North Carolina, becoming the first black mayor of the city. He was also the first black mayor of a southern city that was predominantly white. Soccer legend Pele had nailed his 1,000th goal of all time. It was also the same year that Black Panther Party leadership, specifically state chairmans both Fred Hampton and Mark Clark, were assassinated while sleeping in their beds during a police raid on their Chicago homes. And Neil Armstrong had become the first man to walk on the moon. Allegedly. This was also the same time that Marvel debuted their first ever Black American superhero, Sam Wilson, then known as the Falcon, now known as Captain America. And we're going to be talking about him and his journey from Falcon to Captain America, back to Falcon, and Captain America again right now.
You can't see me, you Stevie, wondering how I reach more evolutions than Evie and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's your boy Ernie the Blur without fear. Welcome back to the channel. All right, so as I said earlier, we're going to be talking about Sam Wilson, Captain America, if you will. And I'm going to be honest, this is going to be I don't know how long this video is going to be. This is probably going to be one of my longer videos that you will hopefully watch all of. But for those that don't know, I normally do this every year, usually, during Black History Month, which, to be fair, I always like to say Black History is all year round. But specifically this time of year, I like to shift my focus a little bit to talk about some things that, people don't really talk a whole heap of a lot about. And while, yes, during Black History Month, it is quite normal for, pretty much any comic book content creator to talk about black superheroes on any level, I kind of like to have a theme to how I do it. And while last year my theme was black female superheroes, for 2025 I wanted to talk about legacy. And what I mean by that is this year I'm going to be specifically focusing on black superheroes who started out as one particular character but later took up a mantle of another character. This is going to be a way for us to have a conversation about black superheroes, and more specifically, why black superheroes always have a difficult time resonating with fan bases for doing something that we totally do not tend to pay much attention to when it comes to white characters. And that's being a legacy character. I know this is going to come up, and I feel like I've already given the definition of what a legacy character is, but just to make it more plain for those who tend to kind of tune out when I am talking but somehow still make it through my videos, I'll just put it as succinctly as this. A legacy character is any superhero or supervillain maybe starts out as being their own character, or maybe just not really having a superhero identity at all, but then somewhere down the road an already established superhero passes on their mantle to that next character, and then that character becomes whoever that character was. In this case, we're talking about Captain America. Steve Rogers is the original Captain America, and he has given his mantle over, or had it taken from him and given to other characters in the past. And in this case, he gave it to Sam Wilson, one of his oldest confidants and one of his longest running, I would actually dare say absolutely his longest running partner, Sam Wilson. So let's get into it. Samuel Thomas Wilson, typically referred to as Sam Wilson, is a Harlem native born and raised who got his start in Marvel Comics as the Falcon with his introduction in Captain America number 117 in 1969. Sam started out as a regular man, and while this is 100% true for his MCU counterpart, brilliantly played by Papa Doc himself, Anthony Mackie, it actually stopped being true in the comics. In Sam's early days as the Falcon, his special training in combat by Steve Rogers and his then natural affinity for training and commanding his pet Falcon, Redwing, were his only special abilities, while Sam Wilson lacked super soldier serum to make him as strong, fast, agile, and durable as Steve Rogers. He would later gain one ability Steve Rogers does not have: avian telepathy. Yeah, I'm not joking. Sam Wilson can communicate with birds in a way not too dissimilar from how people tend to jokingly talk about the DC Comics character Aquaman. But just like Aquaman, people tend to get the whole thing wrong. Aquaman does not talk to fish. He pushes them to do things that he wants them to do. And it's no different for Sam Wilson. He does the exact same thing, not with sea life, but with birds. He compels them to do the things that he wishes for them to do. His mental link is strongest with Redwing, but Sam can command any other bird he wishes, or even multiple birds at once. We've seen Sam command entire flocks of birds of many different types, all at once with little to no effort. He can even see through the eyes of any bird he psionically links with, allowing him to gain intel in ways others wouldn't think of. He's actually used this ability to fight US Agent in a dark tunnel, something that, while yes, US Agent had super soldier serum, thus a leg up over Sam Wilson, who doesn't, super soldier serum does not allow US Agent to see in total darkness, and Sam was able to look through the eyes of an owl and be able to see everything that US Agent couldn't, thus being able to put those hands on him. And this isn't limited to just normal birds either. This applies to any avian life form, earthborn or otherwise. We have even seen Sam use his avian telepathy on beings as powerful as the Challenger, who, mind you, is a cosmic alien being whose species evolved from birds, and while he couldn't compel the Challenger the way he could a normal bird, he was able to see through his eyes long enough so that Synapse could connect with Sam Wilson through his avian telepathy connection and send a shock to Challenger's system, setting him up for his ultimate downfall. He's also proven capable of establishing telepathic connection with Inhumans who have avian DNA, and his abilities have only gotten more powerful since the 2016 Captain America Sam Wilson series. In issue number 13, during the Civil War II story arc, it's revealed Sam has gotten a cybernetic implant based on Cerebro technology. Yes, the same tech that Professor Charles Xavier uses to enhance his own psychic abilities to worldwide ranges and even intergalactic ranges, and this implant allows Sam a very similar function. He is able to gain even more visual information from birds around him, but also record what they see and upload that very same data to a secret data storage location, and he's used this as a way to provide evidence even corporate billionaires can't deny. In Tony Stark's own words, Sam Wilson is the router to the biggest surveillance network in the entire world, just off the strength of this implant and his own psychic abilities. And while it was originally speculated that Sam Wilson, due to his psychic abilities in regards to birds, it was originally believed that he might be a mutant, because at the time that all this was going on, there was no reveal as to how he got these abilities. He just simply had them. It would later even be mused by Charles Xavier in Captain America number 174. His power might actually be mutant in origin. Things got even more murky when in Falcon's own series in 1983, he was revealed to be detected by a Sentinel and even being identified as a mutant. This would all later be undone once it was revealed that his powers weren't mutant in origin. It was actually just a byproduct of the Red Skull using the Cosmic Cube to manipulate Sam, unintentionally psychically bonding him to Redwing shortly after his debut during Captain America number 118 and 119. This was information that we wouldn't get until Captain America number 186, an issue that didn't come out until 1975. As a matter of fact, if you go back and read the Avengers Annual of 2001, it's there where, in kind of a tongue-in-cheek fashion, they also further debunk that Sam Wilson is a mutant, because it's one of those things that by that particular point, it should have been clear, thanks to the earlier Captain America stories, that Sam Wilson isn't a mutant, but because people still kept asking around the time of 2000 and 2001, they actually put this little tongue-in-cheek reference in there, basically calling out, it was almost like a fourth wall breaking moment to the reader, saying like, no, he is not a mutant at all, full stop, end of story. Even if Sam didn't have avian telepathy, he was already a talented bird trainer, able to both train and interact with birds of just about any type. But Sam's main stock in trade was always going to be his trademark, wings. A feature that he has kept largely throughout almost every incarnation of his character, I would almost want to say since his debut, but that's actually not the case. One thing many people who are fans of Marvel Comics and the MCU may not know about Sam Wilson is that when he made his debut in 1969, he did not have any wings. His name was more of a nod to his pet Falcon, Redwing, than actually being able to fly himself. His main mode of transportation was his hawk hook, a grappling hook he used for extra mobility so that he could keep up with the more superpowered Captain America. It actually wasn't until many moons later that Sam realized he needed yet another edge to help him stand shoulder to shoulder with the original super soldier. So 52 issues later, roughly 4 years after his first appearance in 1969's Captain America number 117, he got his trademark wings in Captain America number 170 in 1973. And while MCU normies might think that he only got an upgrade to them from Black Panther later down the road, like his MCU counterpart, it's actually Black Panther who gave him that first set of wings to begin with. In comparison to the wings he's had later in his career, the original set of wings T'Challa gave him weren't anything to write home about outside of the fact that they were made out of titanium and mylar, were incredibly lightweight, and allowed him to fly at high speeds, all while utilizing solar energy. It would be a later set of wings that he ended up getting roughly around the time of Captain America number 408 in 1992 that were a bit more high-tech and very similar to the types of wings we saw Falcon using in Captain America the Winter Soldier. They were still made out of titanium and mylar, but were a lot more heavy duty and had cybernetic attachments that allowed them to disconnect and reconnect from Falcon's costume at will. He even had the fancy infrared goggles get up from the MCU. And later on, Black Panther would give him an upgrade to those wings, creating what was effectively a holographic hard light harness. These wings were controlled with a cybernetic link and had a much larger wingspan of up to 50 feet. And because these wings were made out of hard light, they could be reconfigured to match whatever Sam desired at the time. But his ultimate upgrade to his wings would come 42 years later from Tony Stark. Tony reforged them to be 100% vibranium. These vibranium wings are controlled via a cybernetic link, the same as the old ones, and allow him to absorb metric tons of force. And just as proof of this, he was able to absorb the full force of an Omega bomb created by Arnim Zola, one that if detonated in New York, the entire city would have been vaporized, and while the bomb itself still knocked him on his ass, it didn't kill him. It didn't even really injure him. It just knocked all the wind out of him that he thought he owned and left him unconscious. He was back up and walking around under his own power in a matter of minutes. Was even telling jokes and making light of the fact that he almost died. Now, I wanted to take this as an opportunity to, kind of interject into this video a little something, and it's the fact that the discourse I have seen on social media regarding Sam Wilson's validity as Captain America, it is constantly being called into question, with everyone calling him everything from DEI to an affirmative action hire. And it's silly. It's absolutely and patently silly on its face when you consider the fact that these very same people who tend to have this energy for Sam don't have the same energy for anyone else who has ever been Captain America. They don't have the same energy for Bucky Barnes, aka the Winter Soldier, at all, whose only qualifications, mind you, for being Captain America are, one, him being a former sidekick of Captain America and being turned into a super assassin. Those are his main qualifications. Now, I know some people want to bring Super Soldier Serum into the equation here. I'm going to be honest with you. Super Soldier Serum has nothing to do with anyone's qualifications to being Captain America. It is honestly the least interesting thing about Captain America in a lot of respects, and the mantle of Captain America has more to do with how you operate and think when you are Captain America versus your ability to bend a steel bar or kick down a door or lift a car. It has less to do with that than anything else. And if you don't think that's the case, you've never read a Captain America comic before with any seriousness. The funny thing is that when you go back to those qualifications I listed that Bucky has, Sam has the exact same qualifications. One, he's a former sidekick of Steve Rogers, the original Captain America, and he is even better, treated more like a partner than a sidekick to Steve, and has actually been a partner of Steve Rogers longer than anyone else can profess to be. Number two, he wasn't turned into a super assassin by the Russians like Bucky Barnes was, but ever since he partnered up with Steve Rogers, Sam has both been watching Steve's every move as well as learning on the job, and has been personally trained by Steve Rogers himself, not just in superheroing, but Steve has also taught him how to fight just like him. He has trained Sam Wilson in multiple forms of martial arts and hand-to-hand combat disciplines, namely things like American boxing, judo, karate, and United States military CQC tactics. He has also trained him to be a better gymnast and acrobat, no differently than Steve is. So while Bucky got the Russian great value version of the Captain America training program, Sam actually got it straight from the source. And lastly, there's three. Steve personally chose Sam Wilson to take up his mantle. And better yet, Steve Rogers wasn't dead, or quotey fingers dead, when he passed it on to Sam. So that is yet another feather on Sam Wilson's cap, or in this case, on his wing. Now, before you go running off and complaining that I have made it political all of a sudden, I know, right? Let me present to you the only evidence I need to present in order to get you to see my way of thinking. U.S. agent government name Jonathan F. Walker was the epitome of DEI. He was not even half as qualified as Sam Wilson to be Captain America at the time that Steve Rogers had vacated the role, and he had to be astroturfed with financial backing and a PR team just to be a half-ass credible Captain America. And there are many people who will look you dead ass in the eye and still tell you that U.S. agent was more qualified to be Captain America than Sam Wilson. That is crazy to me. That's crazy. That is cope of the highest order. That is literally, that is Cap and cope of the highest order. You gotta pick one. You can't do both. And while yes, John Walker had the Super Soldier Serum, he was straight up hot dog water. John Walker was so trash, he had the shortest tenure of anyone who has ever attempted to be a long-term Captain America. So bad, Steve Rogers had to drop the Nomad Act and come back to the role just about roughly a year and a half later. And just to give you some comparison's sake, because I know with the passage of time, it's easy to look at things and think, oh, well, Bucky wasn't Cap very long either. Wrong. Bucky was Captain America from December 2007 to November 2011. So yeah, no. That's at least 2.5 years longer than what US Agent was. And while yes, Sam Wilson was Captain America for a brief stint and then gave up the mantle, he is currently Captain America now and has now been Captain America longer than anyone not named Steve Rogers. But once again, you will literally have folks sit up here and tell you that US Agent is still a better choice for Captain America than Sam Wilson, and that's despite the fact that one, Sam has very similar ideals to Steve Rogers, who is, for all intents and purposes, a progressive. Maybe we'll make a video talking about the politics of Captain America and how they have evolved over the years. Yeah, but that's not what we're really here to talk about today. I just really just kind of briefly just put that out there that I'm gonna say he's a progressive and leave it at that, because Captain America is not on that Fox News bullshit the same way the US Agent is. But just the same, Sam is very much a progressive, and I would even dare say more progressive than even Steve. And the thing that people don't want to give Sam Wilson credit for is his overall qualifications, because as I've stated earlier, he has the avian telepathy, he can communicate with birds, he is capable of flight, and he has proven himself as a superhero for several decades. But the thing I think also gets lost in translation a lot of the times is that Sam's not weak by any stretch of the imagination. Short of like superhuman feats, he can do just about everything Steve Rogers can. And that's not even taking into account his hand-to-hand combat ability, something he was naturally gifted with, and growing up in Harlem likely helped, but as I mentioned earlier, he has been personally trained by Steve Rogers, one of the best hand-to-hand combatants in the Marvel Comics universe. And despite not being a super soldier, he has honed his physique and his skill set to help him hold up to any super soldier he encounters. He won't be able to overpower one, but he can make damn sure they know they've been in a fight. He's gone toe-to-toe with characters like Black Panther, Crossbones, the Winter Soldier, Nomad, and US Agent, and either held his own or defeated them. And before you say that there's no way that a normal human can train themselves to be able to fight a superhuman, Batman does it all the time, and no one even so much as bats an eyelash. He has actually specifically stated that he has trained his body in very specific ways in order to fight people as strong as Superman. Superman! A freaking Kryptonian, one of the most powerful beings in the DC Comics universe. Do you have a problem with that? If your answer is either no or, well, but that's different, then my retort to you is that you are either A, a fanboy, B, a racist, or C, which I think is more likely, both. And he's even proven he can wield Captain America's shield in ways even Steve can't. While Steve is more than capable of bouncing his shield off multiple targets and back to himself with pinpoint accuracy, Sam can do the exact same thing, even while flying at high speeds, something that would be infinitely more difficult than simply throwing the shield while standing or even running at a full clip, even for a super soldier. Currently, Sam Wilson's top speed while flying is not exactly recorded. His original wings allowed him to fly at up to 250 miles per hour. And as for his ability to fly, something Cap cannot do, super soldier serum be damned, Sam is a better flyer than either Iron Man or Captain Marvel, which is impressive since Captain Marvel is an actual pilot herself. So just the simple fact that he can outfly two of the Avengers' best flight-capable heroes, as well as fight like Captain America, move like Captain America, and in a lot of ways fight and move at the same time like Captain America, and under more strenuous circumstances, and in every sense of this, not having the super soldier serum to do it, yeah, he's beyond qualified. Now, I want to get back over into the history of Sam Wilson just a little bit more, and to do that, I want to talk about some of the stuff surrounding his character and publication history. He has some of the more interesting moving parts to his design, and one of those things is Sam's namesake is derived from the real-life Samuel Wilson, the very man Uncle Sam is based on, and that his likeness was taken from O.J. Simpson, which at the time of the 70s would be perfectly normal, but by the time the 90s rolled around, this choice probably aged like milk. Thankfully, his depictions in comics have largely shifted over the years to a number of different high-profile Black celebrities and athletes, but more specifically, he has been drawn more often to at least somewhat resemble resemble his MCU counterpart portrayed by Anthony Mackie. Sam also holds the distinction of being a character who stands in a select group of superheroes. He was one of the first Black American superheroes at Marvel, and while T'Challa the Black Panther was the first African superhero of prominence, debuting in 1966, which, to be fair, he's also a Black superhero overall as well, but Sam was the first to be born from America, not a fictitious African nation. He'd be followed by Luke Cage in 1972, and Stan Lee, who co-created the character, was clear about the attention to social movements and wanting the world of Marvel Comics to mirror the very world outside your window, even going as far as to debut the character during a speech at Duke University the same year that Sam Wilson hit comic shelves. Whether as Falcon or as Captain America, Sam has been a longtime ally of the OG original recipe Captain America. And while he has had a lot of great storytelling over the years, I will have to say there is a flag on the play in regards to Sam Wilson that I'm gonna have to talk about. But to do that, I'm also going to have a little something I'm gonna save towards the end that will kind of make up for this. I mentioned earlier there was a story arc that basically retconned the idea of Sam Wilson potentially being a mutant, leading to why he had avian telepathy all of a sudden. Well, that storyline was written by a legendary Marvel Comics writer by the name of Steve Englehart, who made the ill-advised decision to undo Sam Wilson's perfectly fine origin. Originally, Sam was the son of a preacher man who he witnessed be murdered by gang violence. This galvanized Sam into throwing himself deeper into the church and eventually becoming a social worker trying to help others find their place in the world, no matter how jacked up a hand life had dealt them. Steve Englehart decided that wasn't good enough and invented for Sam one of the most convoluted backstories in Marvel Comics history, just short of Psylocke. Englehart decided that in 1975's Captain America number 186 to retcon Sam's original backstory to be a fabrication of the Red Skull in order to trick Steve Rogers into trusting him. Sam and Steve becoming fast allies was all a ruse, and Sam was never a social worker at all, but a gangster named, wait for it, Snap Wilson. Because of course he had to be a pimp-like gangster. 1972's Superfly was still fresh in a lot of people's heads, and I would go on a limb and say, considering the fact that Steve Englehart is a white man, it makes sense to me that he probably thought this was cool. This is very similar to the ways that a lot of white writers back in that time frame tended to think that, oh, I don't have any black friends, that I can ask about this, so I'm gonna go to cinema and television to figure out interesting ways to depict black characters, and that's what I think this was. I seriously believe that movies like Shaft and Superfly, a lot of the blaxploitation of the 70s, I feel like that's really how most white people had any knowledge of black people on any level, was through that, not through actual genuine interactions with black people, by and large, at least in the creative field, if nowhere else. And because writers like this probably had no black friends, Snap Wilson was born. Snap Wilson went down as one of the more problematic handlings of a black character in mainstream comics, which is impressive to say the least. Especially considering all the fuck shit that happens to black characters, ranging from most of them suffering from imposter syndrome, especially in the case of legacy characters, because woe is me, I'm not as good as my white counterpart, something we'll be talking about in a lot more detail when I discuss the character of War Machine. The one sad thing about the Snap Wilson bit is that it lasted for a long time. Like, this wasn't something that only lasted a handful of issues. This ran from 1975 all the way to 1982's Captain America number 277, about roughly 92 issues later. Here, writer J.M. DeMatteis came in and expertly fixed the whole thing. Here, J.M. would write that Sam was disassociating after the death of his mother when he was a child, and that the Snap Wilson persona was part of that, not the musings of the Red Skull, and that the cosmic cube meddling that was done by the Red Skull didn't create Snap Wilson. JM's reason for why the Snap Wilson persona had persisted as long as it did was that it was because Sam went the opposite direction of everything he grew up learning, because his young mind couldn't compartmentalize that all the ideals his father had instilled in him to be a good man had failed his family and led to them being killed. Sam regained his footing and became the genuinely good man that he was originally intended to be, a black man who cared about his community, fought for civil rights, and uplifted his fellow man, regardless of who they were. These are ideals that have followed him ever since and are the reason he was chosen to be Steve Rogers' successor as Captain America. It was then later further expounded on in Rick Remender's all-new Captain America series that all of the instances where Sam Wilson was believed to have operated as a criminal, thus diminishing his original origin, all of that was a fabrication. Sam has never operated as a criminal or gangster or anything short of what he has always acted as, and that is a good man with a good heart who wants to do what's right. Speaking of Sam becoming Captain America, while Sam Wilson is technically the fourth person to be officially and publicly recognized as Captain America, he is technically the fifth. And that is largely due in part to Isaiah Bradley, who is the first black Captain America. He was the second ever person to take up the mantle of Captain America during the Truth, Red, White, and Black story arc, which is a retcon of Captain America's history. That said, he was never officially dubbed Captain America by either Steve Rogers or by the United States government. When he took on the mantle of Captain America and wore the costume, he did so without anyone else's knowledge. Now, saying all that, I said that Sam has a couple of different placements in the area of people who have been Captain America. While it is largely believed that Bucky Barnes is the third ever person to pick up the mantle of Captain America, he is technically the fourth, because the third time someone ever picked up the mantle of Captain America, it was, oddly enough, Sam Wilson, albeit in an unofficial capacity, so that's why it's kind of a technicality. But Sam Wilson briefly became Captain America 8 years before Bucky would pick up the mantle of Captain America in 2007, and 15 years before he would officially pick up the mantle himself in Captain America Sentinel of Liberty Volume 1, Number 9 in 1999. Sam Wilson temporarily put on the Stars and Stripes and took up the shield when Steve was seemingly killed during a riot by a disintegration ray. It turned out he wasn't dead, but in the time that it happened, Sam took up the mantle briefly for a single issue, and even at the end of that issue, Steve recognized that Sam was Captain America, even going as far as to say as much, saying that there's only one Captain America standing here right now, and that's you. Nodding to the fact that he recognized Sam as Captain America, even going as far as to praise how well Sam carried his legacy despite it only being 24 hours. And while Sam immediately went back to being Falcon by the issue's end, this was just one of the reasons Sam eventually became Captain America officially in 2014 and again in 2021. And while he is served on the Avengers as both Falcon and Captain America, his time as Falcon was an interesting one, largely because he was initially brought on to tick a box. This was a part of a story arc in Avengers number 181. Considering that affirmative action was already a thing in the 1960s era of the civil rights movement, it would make sense that this was something that was still technically a topic, considering that it's still a hotly contested topic. Even now, it's a term that gets thrown around a lot, and I think a lot of people don't even really actually know what it means. But ultimately, what I think they were trying to get across in that issue of Avengers number 181 was that Gyrick, who, for those that don't know, Henry Peter Gyrick, who is a longtime enemy of the X-Men, and by this issue was acting as government oversight on the Avengers, decided that he was cutting the very hefty roster of the team down to just 7 members. And he put Sam on the team so that the roster wouldn't be so vanilla. A nice thought, but it was literally only done for public perception. Not because he was qualified, which he was, but in doing so, this caused the team to reveal some things about themselves. Hawkeye, for one, who lost his spot on the team, demanded to know why a guy whose only skills are, let me check my notes here, flying and rapping with birds, replaced him, which is tough talk coming from a dude whose only power is archery. And even Tony Stark was a bit out of pocket, claiming that the Avengers were already inclusive, considering that they already had robots and mutants who are Caucasian. Yeah, Iron Man said that shit. This was one of those story arcs that was trying to tell a story about acceptance and tokenization, and while I don't think the story was meant to have any malice behind it, it was just a very weird story arc considering that we were already doing this thing with War Machine, considering the whole Iron Man debacle. So it was literally 2 of your most prominent black superhero characters not feeling as though they're worthy to stand shoulder to shoulder with their white counterparts. It wasn't a good look then, and it still ain't a good look today. And as I said earlier, Sam questioned his place on the team, largely because he had already tried to team up with the Defenders before this, and it didn't really go particularly well, and he felt like the only person he really worked well with was Captain America, which he would have served with on the team. But at the end of the day, he started to feel as though his opinion was not being taken into account, that he was being dismissed by his teammates, which in a lot of ways he kind of was. And he ultimately ended up leaving the team, especially after having so many weird interactions with other characters. His future tenures with the Avengers would go way better and not have half of the problematic undertones that his first one did. Now, there is one last little bit of trivia I want to leave with you as we get ready to wrap this video up, talking about and celebrating Sam Wilson as Captain America. And that is, Captain America, Steve Rogers, is known for a very weird thing. And I would forgive many people if they didn't know about this, but in the 90s, Captain America had a very interesting story arc where he took on the moniker of CapWolf. This is a story arc that ran through the early 1990s, roughly around the issues of Captain America number 405, where Captain America was quite literally turned into a werewolf.
Oh my God, bro.
Oh, hell no, man. What the fuck, man? Get your ass on, boy. You get your goddamn ugly ass.
Yeah, that was the thing. And while it seems like such a strange thing for the Sentinel of Liberty, he actually wasn't the first Captain America character to do it. Sam Wilson did it first. Granted, he didn't do it as Captain America, he did it while he was still in his role of Falcon. And this took place in 1973's Captain America number 164. Cap had to fight off a rabid werewolf version of Falcon when he was given a serum by the, at the time, villainous Nightshade, one that turned him into a Lon Chaney Jr. style Wolfman, not too dissimilar from the Werewolf by Night character, Jack Russell. Sam would later become a legit CapWolf in 2015 as an opening salvo to Nick Spencer's Captain America Sam Wilson series. In that story arc, Sam becomes a werewolf, no differently than CapWolf, well, except for the fact that when Steve was CapWolf in the 90s, he actually struggled to learn how to speak so that other people could understand him. In this particular instance, Sam is able to speak normally just fine and communicates back and forth with Misty Knight and other characters with no problem whatsoever. It may have more to do with the fact that this time around, Nightshade isn't involved originally when Sam was turned into a werewolf and Steve was turned into a werewolf. Nightshade was directly responsible for it. In this case, it's another villain altogether, a character by the name of Malice. So there you go. That's actually something fun you can kind of keep in your back pocket whenever someone wants to throw around some random Sam Wilson trivia. There you go. That's the thing. You can totally take that and, use it in good health. Now, another interesting little factoid that I'll also throw in, we just talked about Sam Wilson being a werewolf, is an also interesting factoid about his bird, Redwing. Some of you may or may not know this, but Redwing is not just a normal falcon, or at least not anymore. Redwing is a vampire falcon.
Are you serious right now, bro?
Yeah, I'm not joking. I'm being dead ass when I say this. This actually occurred in the 2016 Captain America Sam Wilson series by Nick Spencer. In that series, Baron Blood, who is a vampire member of Hydra, grabbed a hold of Redwing and bit him. And in that instance, transferred the effect of vampirism to Redwing. And this has not been retconned ever since. As a matter of fact, to this very day, Redwing is still considered a vampire. Redwing, since being bitten in 2016, has remained unaffected by sunlight. Now, him being a vampire has also led to him having a healing factor. So I just want y'all to take all that in just for a moment, that right now in the MCU, there is a robot version of Redwing running around with Sam Wilson in the MCU when he could have had a vampire bird. Hey, I'm just saying, man. I'm just saying. I think we lost out on that one. I'd rather have the vampire bird, but hey, you do what you got to do. I have not always been the hugest fan of Sam Wilson as a character, not because I thought he was a bad character, but just because I felt like his depictions in the in the 70s and the 80s, I always felt like he never really got the due that he deserved. I felt like, and I think rightfully so, a lot of writers just didn't know what to do with him, because back in that time frame, you didn't really have very many black writers who were writing for Marvel at the time. Like, two of the most well-known writers that were working at Marvel kind of in and around the 80s were Christopher Priest and Dwayne McDuffie. Yeah, that was really it. That was it. Not to say there weren't black writers out there, they were, but just the hiring practices of that time frame didn't afford for it. So a lot of times, a lot of black character stories got told through a white lens. Not to say white people can't write black characters effectively, but I'm going to be honest with you. It is to say that your chances of a black character story being told better is always going to be higher when you have a black writer who actually knows how to write black characters. And I say that because a lot of the times when these white writers try to write black characters, they ever so often feel the temptation to try and write a story that speaks to a black audience, but they don't know the black audience that would potentially be reading these stories. So a lot of times the stories they tell wind up feeling like they're more to make white people feel better than they are to enrich and draw the attention of black readers. Or at the very least, if they do draw the attention of black readers, it's not for the right reasons. Usually because black people are making fun of these stories because of how ridiculous they are. Case in point, Snap Wilson. A lot of great writers have made this mistake. A lot of great writers who you would hold up as legendary writers, have made this mistake. And it sucks. It sucks to see it. But I am thankful that nowadays it is more common for black writers to write black characters and be given that opportunity to write them in such a way that enriches the character and doesn't diminish them and make them out to be less than their white counterparts. This whole video was ultimately just me kind of learning how much I have enjoyed Sam Wilson as a character over the years, and I'm still enjoying him now, because I feel like the moment that Sam started to kind of step out onto his own, kind of later on in his career, I would actually say closer to the early aughts era, kind of in and around Civil War and ongoing forward, I feel like Falcon had started to step out and become a much more nuanced character than I feel he was given the opportunity to be back during the late 60s, 70s, 80s, and a lot of the 90s. And then you get to roughly around now, and it's like, oh, he is such a far more fleshed out character, far more entertaining, far more interesting than anything that you could potentially see elsewhere in Marvel from the time of his debut. I think it's safe to say actually having a message, actually having a direction for a character, while I am happy that Sam Wilson debuted when he did, it does kind of feel like he was just there to tick a box. And it wouldn't be until much later where writers actually knew what to do with him, to actually make it something special, as opposed to it just being a novelty. But anyway, I know we just talked about some pretty heavy stuff, and at least for comic books, and I want to thank you if you're still here, you're watching this video. I appreciate it. I would also really appreciate it if you hit that like button. Really helps the channel out. And also, if for whatever reason you're still here and you have never subscribed to this channel, you have enjoyed this content, if you want to see more like it, hit the subscribe button and tap the notification bell. That way you don't miss out on more videos like these. I don't know which video is going to come up next. I'm actually plotting for a War Machine video to come out after this one in the following week. So yeah, make sure, if you haven't done so already, hit that subscribe button. If you hit the notification bell, you will not miss that video, because I really want everyone to see what I have to say about Iron Man's best and really only black friend.